What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new episode of the Pro-Black Blurred Kingdom podcast. So before I go on to the topic for today, I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping. That way you kind of understand where the direction of this podcast is going. So those of you all who are fans and who have regularly tuned into my content know that I did 50 episodes for the first season of the Pro-Black Blurred Kingdom podcast, and it was on a lot of major podcast sites such as Anchor, Spotify, and places like that. Now, what I'm doing with some of these videos, starting with this video, is I'm going to be doing specific videos that are going to be tailored to the YouTube channel, and then I'm going to be doing things for the podcast when I start up season 2, which won't be until maybe sometime in the fall and whatnot. But anyway, today I want to talk to you all about the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I wanted to give my thoughts on it, my rating, and the overall everything as far as the way I saw the movie. So I went and saw it last Saturday at the movie theater here in the town that I live in. And it was pretty empty because the movie's been out for a little bit. The movie's been out since I think the 5th, if I'm not mistaken. And there wasn't a lot of people in the movie theater, and I was happy about that because I don't actually like having a lot of people in the movie theater. I don't like when there's so many people and you got people making noises and all this other stuff. I like to enjoy my movie in peace and as much silence as I can possibly get. And obviously, if you got people coming into the movie theater and whatnot, that is only so possible. So my wife and I, we went to go see the movie, and I'll say just as a disclaimer before I kind of go into everything else about it, I love this whole idea of video game-esque type of movies, like the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise and things like that. I like how they are actually pretty good. I think that for the most part, they're doing a good job of recreating what we enjoyed from the video games that we played. And I've seen that in the Sonic movie, and I'm seeing that for the most part in the Mario movie as well, too. So that's my disclaimer here, is that I think that, they're doing a good job as far as like the look goes and as far as, the nostalgia and things like that. So I definitely am going to have to give them their credit there. Now, when it comes to the movie, I thought it was good, so don't get me wrong. However, I felt like something was off, and it took me a while, even after watching the movie, to kind of get my thoughts together on what exactly was off about it. And what's funny is my wife actually was kind of surprised, because usually when her and I go to see a movie, and as soon as I'm done, I'm able to just tell her exactly what I thought about it, like what I didn't like, what I did like, and just how I felt overall as far as what the rating would have been. And this was like the first time that it took me like about 5 minutes to really even say anything concrete about what I thought about it, because I really had to gather my thoughts on what was all really happening. The reality with this movie is that it was good, but there was something that was off. And what was off to me was that there was one big problem with the movie that created all of the other problems in the movie. So before we get into all the stuff that wasn't good, let's just talk about what was good. The nostalgia. There was a lot of nostalgia, and it was good. It was very true to the video game character. It was true to what we've seen in the Mario universe, and it was true to how it probably would have played out if it was a movie. So the nostalgia was great. The graphics were pretty decent. I also thought that the Bowser character was very enjoyable. Bowser, if you all don't know, is actually my favorite Mario character. One of my favorite video game characters, actually. I think dude is hilarious. He's powerful. He's interesting. He has a lot of personality, despite the fact that he's a villain. And despite the fact that he is just a total asshole, like a mustache villain almost to a certain extent, you actually love to see Bowser on screen. It almost feels like you rather see Bowser than Mario. He's so cool. So I thought that they did a great job with the Bowser character, and I think that Jack Black was a very great pick to portray the Bowser role. So I'm definitely going to give them credit when it comes to that. The other thing that I really liked about this movie was the fact that they kind of teased Luigi's Mansion to a certain extent. Because at first when I was looking, I was like, I didn't really see the boos, because they're a very important villain in the Mario series. And I'm like, I don't really see them for real. So what's up with that? But then now I'm kind of realizing they could actually craft the boos into like a Luigi's Mansion type of thing. And I don't know if that means that they're going to have a Luigi spinoff, or they're going to have spinoffs of the different characters, like having a Mario movie, you know, having a Luigi movie, having a Donkey Kong movie. I don't know if they're going to do that necessarily, but from my perspective, I could see it being a thing where they might possibly do a Luigi's Mansion movie and have maybe King Boo or somebody like that being the main villain. But again, King Boo was in the movie, so it's kind of hard to tell where they were going with that. Regardless, I'm going to give them a dub on that one, because that was a good thing, I will admit. So here's the thing that I also want to kind of emphasize. I went into the movie with high expectations because of, one, how the Sonic movie was, and two, because of the fact that the Mario series is actually in my top 5 like favorite video game series. Like if I had to rank it, I probably would go with Sonic as number 1. I probably would put Pokemon as number 2 and Mario as number 3 for me. Now, there's a couple other series in there that I did not mention that are pretty high up on my list, but the point I'm trying to make is that Mario is a series that I absolutely adore, so seeing a movie adaptation of it was pretty dope. I was just happy to be able to say that I went to go see this movie and it actually was pretty decent. Like, it wasn't something that I felt like was a real fail. Now that all that is out the way, let's address the elephant in the room. Everybody's polarized on this, but I know some people probably feel different than what I'm going to say about this particular issue with the movie. The elephant in the room was that Peach was a big problem. Peach was a huge problem in this movie for me, and I'm going to explain in what way. Let's look at the elephant in the room from a more microscopic lens. Like, let's look even deeper in. The main issue with this movie to me was that Mario was Luigi, Luigi was Peach, and Peach was Mario. Point blank, period. Full stop. It felt like the way that they told the character stories was as if they switched everybody's roles in almost like a 3-way triangle. Like, it didn't really feel like they adapted the roles that they have adapted in a lot of the video games. So I think that what they were going for when they created this movie was to create a girl boss type of character. Or that's the way that I think people have been describing Peach online. But to me, I didn't really like the way that they portrayed Peach. It's not as bad as it could have been, but I didn't totally care for the way that they did, because to me, I felt like they were just off. Peach felt more like Daisy to me. Daisy was kind of a tomboy. Daisy, she wears dresses and all this other stuff. She has more of a dominant presence, you know? And it felt like Peach kind of had that dominant presence as well, too. Now, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't some, like, toxic feminist type shit where it's being thrown in your face every 5 seconds. It wasn't really like that. But it was very subtle. And regardless of it being subtle, it still was an issue. So let me explain why. I think we've been conditioned so much to see these feminist narratives on a lot of TV shows, and when I say feminist, we're talking about like white feminism, like feminist type of movies. We've been conditioned to see that so much in like these Marvel movies and even some of like the DC movies and TV shows and films and stuff like that, that we kind of feel good that we're seeing something that is a watered down version of that. And that's kind of what Peach was. So it wasn't like the feminist element was really totally gone. It was like the feminist element had been watered down, and we were happy that it wasn't as bad as it usually is. And that tells me that we have a big problem, which is that there is this like undying urge for creators to create a feminist narrative no matter what. Like, that has to be a thing. And so I'll tell you how I feel about the dynamic of telling those stories in different movies. As you all know, I talk about Black empowerment in a lot of the content that I not only create but also enjoy. So I tend to not really concern myself too much with these types of narratives when they exist in content that doesn't really involve my people. In other words, I really don't truly have a dog in this fight in particular. But I'm bringing this up because I'm a fan of the Mario series, and I'm looking at the accuracy of the way the characters were portrayed. A lot of people are making the argument that Peach was not the damsel in distress Peach that you've seen in the actual video games. But the reality is that the Peach that we saw was more of like the Super Smash Brothers type. See, that don't make sense to me because I feel like this is supposed to be a Mario Brothers movie, so they should portray her in the way that she was portrayed in like the Super Mario Bros. Series, not Super Smash Brothers, where they take like a gigantic amalgamation of different characters and put them into one world. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like it's going way beyond the scope of trying to tell the story in the way that it should be told. I feel like it's almost explaining why you chose to put in a certain narrative that other people noticed. It's like, yeah, we put in a feminist narrative, but let me tell you why it was justified. That's kind of how it felt, to a certain extent. Now, again, it wasn't really in your face. However, the issue is that the Peach character was just not like how I remember her being in the video games. And to be honest, she took up so much space, it limited the other characters. I wanted to see more of the bond between Mario and Luigi as they went through these different mazes. But instead, what we got was Luigi essentially being the damsel in distress. I mean, Luigi, don't get me wrong, has always been a little clumsy and a little awkward, but he had his own style to the way that he maneuvered. If you look at his moves and you look at Mario's moves, they're vastly different. And the awkwardness kind of worked for Luigi. And we really didn't get to see that because dude basically was, again, a damsel in distress. And that was pretty much it. As far as Mario basically was Luigi, right? Mario was clumsy, Mario was incompetent, and Mario had to have this moment of, I'm learning the ropes. And I feel like Mario should have already been in that mode, once the movie started. So in other words, let me kind of explain my point. The way they told the story was as if Mario had never been through those like world mazes that he goes through basically all his damn games. And that Peach was his tutor or his mentor to be able to figure out how to kind of navigate these different worlds that he was going through. In the games, Mario was never really awkward. Now, obviously, like, they wanted to show how he could potentially die, and I feel like they could have done that to a certain extent. And I'm going to explain in a little bit how they could have done that in a way that made a lot of sense. But the point that I'm trying to make to y'all is that it felt like because Peach was so aerodynamic, Peach was so dominant, and Peach was such a good fighter, and Peach was so good at completing these mazes, it felt like there was no room for all of the other characters to shine, especially like Mario, and it was really mainly his thing. Really, it was supposed to be him and Luigi, but definitely him. He wasn't really able to shine in the way that I felt like he should have shined. The thing about this whole Peach thing, the name of the movie is called the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but with Peach feeling like she had the spotlight for the majority of the movie, it was almost as if it should have been called the Super Peach Movie, and I don't know, I really did not like that personally. And the other thing too, and this is a real quick thing that kind of was weird, was it felt like Mario was trusted so quickly. It felt like it wasn't a thing where Mario came into the kingdom and the Toads were skeptical, and then Peach basically told them to chill out, let me have a conversation with him, and let me kind of see what he's about and things like that. It wasn't anything like that. It felt like she was just kind of cool with him just kind of walking up in the crib, really trespassing if you really think about it, like in the crib. So I don't know. That was a little weird, but I'm not really too mad about that when it comes to the story, because they only have so much time to try to portray, their story and whatnot. I felt like it should have been a thing of they kind of told the story of Mario and the original Donkey Kong, which I guess is Cranky Kong, and how they had a beef back in the day because Cranky Kong tried to steal his girlfriend. So this is essentially would have established that Mario himself was already privy and well versed in what these different worlds actually were like, because he had to navigate that in order to be able to save his girlfriend in the past. Then what I think they should have done at that point was fast forwarded to the present day, where Mario is no longer this hero who was fighting this big bad Donkey Kong type monkey, and he's now kind of trying to find his way with different things. So they could have still gone the role of him trying to have a plumbing business with his younger brother and being a good role model and an example to his younger brother and somebody to look up to. So they still could have went with that. But then I think what they could have done at that point was made it where Pauline, who was the girlfriend that he was saving, was down on him as well too. Like, she didn't really seem to totally believe in him anymore because of the fact that he kind of came off like kind of washed up. And so that could have been a way to break them up, because it also would have gone into how Nintendo like just totally neglected Pauline forever, and then went into this angle where it seemed like Mario had somewhat of a thing for Princess Peach. Because they never really directly said that Peach and Mario ever dated. They just made it clear that, you know, there may have been some type of attraction or interest between the characters because they were always paired together and he was always saving her and all this other stuff. But the point that I'm trying to make is that this could have been a way to break Pauline and Mario up from the get-go, but also explain the origins of how, you know, it all ended between them. Then at some point there could have been a thing where maybe they got into like this Mushroom Kingdom world while they were doing like the plumbing business. Like maybe there was a pipe and they got sucked into the pipe and they ended up in like the Mushroom Kingdom, and the Mushroom Kingdom was actually what was unknown to them. So not necessarily the idea of maneuvering and walking and jumping on different blocks. Like that wasn't unfamiliar because he did that kind of when he was dealing with Donkey Kong, but just the idea that there was this new Mushroom Kingdom that he had never heard of. So they could have done that angle, and then that's when he could have found out that there was Princess Peach in that world, you know, and it would have kind of played some similarities to, you know, Super Mario 64 to a certain extent. Then what I could have seen after that was Mario was kind of confident about maneuvering through these different boards, and Peach was enthralled when she realizes this. So in other words, they actually do meet. At first she's skeptical because she doesn't really know who he is because he's kind of a stranger. And then, you know, when he kind of introduces himself and whatnot, and he's trying to figure out how to get back to his own world, which he did not expect to really be in. Like, he didn't expect to be in this mushroom world. Then what could have happened was she could have been like, well, you're in the Mushroom Kingdom, and this is what our world is like. And so he could have like went exploring with her and whatnot. And then that's when you could have brought in Bowser, who was on this mysterious mission to basically capture Princess Peach. So the idea is that they could have made it where this was the first time that Bowser ever tried to capture the princess, because he was interested in her and he always thought that she was beautiful. And so he could have gotten jealous because he saw her hanging out with Mario. And then that could have been a way for him to capture Princess Peach and basically hold her captive as the damsel in distress. And if she was this big source of guidance, like they were trying to make her seem, then she could have been more so like moral support, and she could have been somebody who was already on the inside because she was captured, and she was trying to basically send messages to Mario on how he can basically help, save her and whatnot. So in other words, her and Mario would have been acquainted because as Mario was in this world trying to figure out how to get back to his own world, they would have bonded over time, and she would have gotten used to him, and they would have became friends in the same way they became friends in this movie. So I think that what they could have done after that was, after they captured Princess Peach, the Toads could have been like, yo, Mario, you trying to go save our girl? I mean, like, we have a princess captured by this big ass fire breathing turtle, so can you help us out? And Mario would have been like, yeah, I'm gonna do that, since they bonded. And then Luigi would have just been kind of scary at first, but then Mario would have just led by example. So I think that they could have went down that path, but they didn't. What they did more so was make it so that Peach was, again, very aerodynamic. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was able to maneuver through the board without any problems. And really, to be honest, Peach just looked like totally dominant the entire time. She wasn't obnoxious, and she didn't knock Mario over and belittle him. Now, she did pick at his height, which was like low level emasculating, but she didn't like try to push him over or knock him over or anything like that. Regardless, the point I'm trying to make is that she was a good fighter. She almost didn't even seem like she was threatened by the fact that she was captured by Bowser. Whereas I felt like it should have been a thing where she didn't know what was going to happen, and she would have felt like she would have had to marry him, and nobody would have been able to help her, or nobody would have been able to, like save her. She would have felt helpless is what I'm getting at. And it didn't feel like she was helpless that entire time. It felt like she knew exactly what she was doing. If anything, it felt like Mario was a side character in his own movie. I mean, Mario, a lot of those times was falling off a Rainbow Road and kind of in big ass fish's mouths with Donkey Kong, and he was trying to figure his way through things, and it just didn't really make sense to me. And then we just basically got to see none of what Luigi was capable of whatsoever. So it really didn't feel like the Mario Bros were really working together. It felt like they were in separate worlds, basically the entire movie, reminiscing on what they used to be as children. Also, the idea of them being from New York or being from Brooklyn also didn't totally make sense to me, because what I felt like they did was they were kind of throwing in random cameos, but not really allowing them to gel together, like nostalgia and cameos. They were throwing in a lot of stuff, but it wasn't gelling well, which is another point that I'm going to go into later, but I just want to kind of emphasize the point I'm making right now. The issue I had was him being in Brooklyn was not canonically accurate when you compare this character in the video games. If you look at Mario Odyssey, for example, he was in this place called New Donk City, which essentially is a more cartoony, loony, Mario-esque version of New York City. So I would have hoped that if they were going to have him be from somewhere, it would have been New Donk City. And now some people are like, well, cool, Colas, that's just, Mario Odyssey. You might be thinking about it too deep. And I would tell you that you need to kick fucking rocks. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Bowser was dressed in a all-white suit that looked exactly like, or very close to, the suit that he had in Mario Odyssey when he was trying to force Peach to marry him. And when I saw that, I said there was no reason for them to not include New Donk City then. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that in order to make Peach as dynamic and powerful as possible, what they did was they made Mario clumsy. They made Luigi basically a bitch, or at least a damsel in distress. Let's say that. They made him a damsel in distress. And then what they did was they made it so that Mario wasn't even from a similar world. So it was almost as if he had no type of understanding of how to maneuver as a hero whatsoever. And I don't really feel like that was ever the case for Mario's character. It felt like, because of the fact that they wanted to make Peach so dynamic, it had to be her to be able to explain to him how he was supposed to maneuver in a world that was like that. That didn't really make sense to me. I don't really feel like that was something that was necessary or something that they had to do. Now, there's other issues with the whole Mario and Peach thing. Like, for example, it didn't really feel like there was any real, I hate the word romantic, I ain't gonna say that, intimate connection between the characters. It felt like they were just homies. Like, it felt like that was her homeboy. It didn't feel like that was like her boo, or her potential boo even. It didn't really feel that way between them. Now, some people may argue that Mario and Peach have never shown signs of, or never shown an actual physical relationship. But one, this is a movie that's supposed to be different than the video games to some extent, right? So that's one thing to consider. Two, let's also consider the idea that it didn't really feel like there was any type of spark between them, even from Mario's end. Because while I would entertain the argument that maybe Peach didn't really have a thing for him, you're not reading the room if we were to say that Mario hasn't shown signs of being at least attracted to Peach to some extent. So going back to what I was saying, I don't know. I kind of expected Peach to be a little softer than what she was. She wasn't masculine, but I wanted her to be a little bit more graceful and not as like aerodynamic as they made her. Like, she was the shit in this movie. I don't know why Peach was so powerful, but it just felt like too much. That's all I guess I'm trying to say, is that it just felt like it was too much. And by making her too much, they risked making the other characters good or true to form. So they did that, to me, they did that on purpose. It felt like Peach was the main character of the series. One big issue was the Peach character. Like, yes, she was feminine, but they still like had her taking up way too much of the movie. Now, another thing that is a kind of more broad issue with this movie, in my opinion, is they do what I've seen Marvel and DC do, which is they don't make a good storyline, and in order to compensate for it, what they do is they give you a bunch of bells and whistles. They give you a bunch of nostalgia. They throw things at you. They razzle dazzle you with graphics, cameo references, or have a appear that's going to make you forget how not so great the storyline was. Because I'm gonna be totally honest with you, that storyline wasn't really all that to me. It really was not. It was very overrated. I've been seeing people talk about, oh, it was marvelous, it was a 10 out of 10. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, don't get me wrong, but y'all are really milking that shit. That shit was not a 10 out of 10. That storyline was ass. But there were other parts that were good that made up for how ass the storyline was. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that y'all are too busy getting razzle-dazzled by things that really, at the end of the day, aren't all that great. Like, if you look at the big picture, it wasn't all that. The storyline was really not that good, and there was no reason to pretend like the movie was perfect when they were literally using the cameos as a way to compensate for a terrible story or just a not great story. So my other issue with this movie is it kind of piggybacks off of the point that I just made. It feels like the story was written in a way where they threw so much at us with the cameos and all this other stuff that it kind of felt like they threw so much at us with cameos. It felt like they were kind of jumbling things together, and they just weren't really meshing that well together. So let me kind of clarify what I mean by that. Like, the Rainbow Road thing was a lovely touch, but I don't ever remember Rainbow Road connecting to Kong Jungle. Like, I just don't remember that being a thing. And that kind of felt awkward. Another thing is that I felt like in their end scene, if you ever look at it, it really felt like the Yoshi thing was kind of like ruined, because they had a cameo where you saw these different colored Yoshis, and at the end they had a Yoshi egg as if they had never showed us Yoshi before. I didn't like that because it kind of ruined the surprise. It kind of made me feel like, man, there should have been something else as an end scene. But like, yeah, they showed Yoshis in the background at some point. And then they showed a Yoshi egg, and then they had Yoshi making the Yoshi noise, or however the hell he says that shit. And to me, like, I felt like if this was a movie where they were going to try to surprise us, they shouldn't have like put Yoshi, like different colored Yoshis in the background. It should have been like Birdos or something like that. Speaking of like Birdos and other Bowser minions and people like that, there were Bowser minions that I didn't really see that should have been in there. Like, for example, where were the Hammer Brothers? I didn't see them whatsoever, and they're like Bowser's like main people. The Goombas, although they were in there, they didn't really have much of a role. I would have loved to have seen Mario maybe stomp on a Goomba or something like that. I would have loved to also have seen like the Koopa Patrol. I didn't see the Koopa Patrol. Remember, they were in Paper Mario. They could have been like some of his like guards that he could have had that would have been like helping him. I really didn't see them for real like that. Other things that I like really like kind of wish were in the movie. I kind of wish that they didn't try to throw so much all at once, you know. I felt like they were trying to give us Donkey Kong, and then they were trying to like make a cameo towards Diddy, but it's like y'all haven't even really like released Yoshi yet, but you guys are already talking about Diddy Kong. And the other thing too is they already were teasing Rosalina way too early. I mean, nigga, slow down. We ain't seen Yoshi, we ain't seen Daisy, we ain't seen Wario, we ain't seen Waluigi, and y'all's asses are already talking about the bitch in the stars. Like, to me, I feel like they should have, in my opinion, really like waited and kind of just like paced it a little bit better, because, you know, it just kind of just felt like they were so quick to try to put her in as a character, because you had Luma and then you had Peach teasing the storyline of, I don't know where I come from, but I know that I ended up here and I was raised by the toads here. And then she was looking up into the stars in the sky. It's like they were kind of going the route of maybe going towards like a Mario Galaxy type of thing, which that's interesting in theory. Don't get me wrong, it's interesting, but I felt like I'm like pump your brakes, slow the hell down. You got other very iconic Mario characters that need to be introduced that you have not introduced yet, because I mean, it just came out and y'all already talking about damn Rosalina. Chill the hell out. Like, I don't know, that kind of bothered me a little bit. I don't know, it just bothered me. And it might be because I'm not really a big Rosalina fan. I don't really see the big whoop. It was a lot. I want to go back to the Peach thing. I just can't get over it. I felt like they were giving her too much shine, because I have not, although I know it's happened in games, I have not seen Peach pick up a bunch of fire flowers and start fighting with them and get an ice flower, and now she's like fighting like she's the ice princess. I'm like, are you trying to make Peach Elsa or some shit? Like, I just feel like the emphasis was just so, I don't know. Like, it was too much. And then I felt like they were just trying to give anybody those power-ups. And that's why I said that shit should have been saved for Mario. And then if they wanted to later down the line, like in other movies, like do something cool where the other characters were able to kind of take advantage of these items, I think that would have been better. But then they had Donkey Kong, like, using the fireballs and whatnot. And all of that was kind of cool. Let's be real. Donkey Kong has never been in any Mario game of that style where he's done that and he's been able to utilize a fireball. Donkey Kong, for the most part, has used his actual damn fist. You know, he's dealt with bananas, barrels, and stuff like that. But he's never really, like, taken advantage of using, like, the power-ups in the Mario world. Like, he's literally never been in any game that I know, Mario-esque, where he has been able to take advantage of using like a Mario power-up ever. So that was a little weird. It was cool, but it was also weird at the same time too. It just felt like they were trying to like throw in so much all at once. Outside of, you know, those issues, I thought the movie was decent. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I thought it was funny. Bowser again had me cracking up with that Peaches song and him being dramatic as hell. Bowser's always been dramatic as hell, let's be real. I thought that was really funny. I thought that the interactions between Mario and the other characters was pretty funny as well too. And I mean, even the non-canon scenes in the very beginning, you know, when he was dealing with his parents and all this other stuff, even that was pretty decent. I didn't have no problems with that. But if I knew that that was all going to be used just to be able to buff Peach up so that she really was like the highlight, I would have basically said, just save it then, because I really don't want to see all that. I want to see like a cool backstory that ties into things that we know about, like these different characters that we see. So yeah, if I had to give this movie a rating overall, I probably would give it about a 7 out of 10. It was good. It was not great. And I wish I could give it much higher than a 7, but man, oh man, oh man, did they drop the ball in the areas that I didn't think that they would. Anyway, y'all, that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I'm going to have a lot more to come, so stay tuned, and I will be talking to y'all later. Peace.